Hello beautiful shrimp people, in today's video we're going to cover the most common mistakes cherry shrimp keepers make in the beginning, and we're going to show you how to fix them, right? So let's get started in numero uno, number one. So the first mistake new shrimp keepers make, especially cherry shrimp keepers obviously, is that they don't cycle their tanks. We briefly touched on this in the last two previous videos, and it is probably the number one mistake that you will make in the hobby is when you buy a tank and you fill it up with water and you add your shrimp to it and they all die within a couple of days and you're wondering, oh, wonder why that is. That is because you're not cycling your bloody tank. Right, and guys, I want to make this clear as well that all these mistakes that you make in the beginning are not unique to you. Right? We all go through this. It's like a bit of a learning curve, learning how to keep shrimp compared to fish as an example. Right? So how would you fix it? Right, so if you'd made this mistake, how would you fix it? The easy, simple solution, guys, is this, right? You get your hands like this, put them on your ass, and you sit on them, right? And you wait, and you give yourself time, because that is how the cycle works. It can only really work with time. You can't fix it instantly. You can get bacteria and stuff that helps you cycle your tank a little bit faster, but the best thing you can do, as I said, is sit on your hands and wait. There's no rush with this kind of stuff, and in the end, your shrimp will love you more for it. Okay, so the second most common mistake that I see is people adding tap water directly to the tank and the shrimp going on their belly and floating around, and yeah, that's not a good thing. Really. You have to understand, guys, with the tap water, it can be so different to what is in the tank, as in all the parameters could be different, the temperature could be different, pH could be different, all that stuff, everything that you can think of could be different in the tank. There could be, for example, heavy metals as well. There could be chlorine, fluoride, chloramines, ammonia. There's a whole host of things in tap water that can affect your shrimp rate. So the simple solution to this, guys, is to age your water, and that all that involves is actually placing the water that you want to put into the tank into a container overnight with maybe something like a bubbler in it, and using something like a dechlorinator. Using a dechlorinator is always a good idea if you use tap water. In fact, I would go as far as saying it is a must, right? So the ones I have used, the ones I still use today are Secum Prime, right? Secum Stability, not Secum Prime, yeah, Stability. What's it called? Secum, I can't remember the word for it because I use Secum Stability now. And what's the old one? Is it Prime? Stability, I can't remember. Secum Safe, oh my god, I'm so bad. Right? So the one I use now is Secum Safe in powder form, and the one that I used to use was Secum Prime. And I've heard conflicting stories whether Secum Safe actually can take out heavy metals from tap water, but as far as I can see online with reading and stuff from the Secum website, it is a dechlorinator and a water conditioner, right? So if you have to get one single dechlorinator or something that takes out chemicals and binds ammonia and nitrate and all that kind of stuff, right, go for Secum Safe. So in at number 3, right, we have the third most common mistake. Right, guys, as I said, right, I probably say the same things over and over in my videos, and that is these mistakes are very common and they might not be in the exact order that you think, but I just tried to think of the most common mistakes that people make and how I could help them. Right, so in at number 3 is overfeeding, and the end result is poor water quality. Right, the amount of comments I get in my videos saying, Mark, can you please help me, all my shrimp are dying, and then someone sends me a picture of their tank, or if I'm on Facebook, for example, and you guys will all know that I have a Facebook group called Aquarium Shrimp Keeping, right? The amount of posts you go in there, people saying, the shrimp are dying, can you help me, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, we always do want to help, right? But the most common thing that you will see is a thick layer like this of food or mulm in their substrate, right? And that is not a good thing, right? And quite often they'll say at the same time, why do I have so many planaria? Why is there so many worms and you know, you've got to think, you're overfeeding your tank. Your little sponge filter in the back can't cope with you adding so much food into the water, right? So how would you fix this? How would you fix an overfeeding issue? Well, the simple solution is stop adding bloody food to the tank. Right, guys, I was told the best way to make videos from now on is, Mark, just be yourself and talk to the camera like you're my friend, you know, a wee buddy. a wee bald buddy there. No, that's me. And yeah, so the best way to deal with this, guys, is to stop feeding so much food into the tank in the first place. Use the napper, and from there on, right, you can start to do things like removing some water. If you have an active substrate, guys, and you do this, you must stick to doing small water changes, or you will change the parameters in the tank, your shrimp will try and molt, and they will be dead, right? It's not quite so different with cherry shrimp, because cherry shrimp and Neocaridina, for example, are very, very adaptable, right? So when you do this, do your water change. In this tank, as I said, I could do 30% water change in this every single week, and I age my water, and I put it into the tank. And you guys have seen I actually add the water quite quick into this tank as well. And that, guys, I breed thousands of neos, thousands of cherry shrimp. Right, so add your water back into the tank, and if you must, guys, if you must do this, you can vacuum the substrate. But if you have baby shrimp, don't do it, because you will actually kill the baby shrimp. I'm talking about ones that are newborn shrimp that are very, very small, like 1 to 2 mil in size. If you vacuum the substrate with shrimp that small, the turbulence created with all the things, particles and the gravel going like this, will simply mush them to bits, right? So what can you do in that case? The best thing, again, is sit on your hands and give it time, and these layers will eventually go away themselves as the bacteria and stuff in the tank munch through them, right? So there is how you fix poor water quality in your tanks. Okay, beautiful shrimp people, in at number 4 is not actually adding enough to your tank in the first place. Right? The amount of tanks that I've seen where people will have a basic sponge filter and they will have gravel and that's it. Right? This type of setup, it really doesn't work with Neocaridina. If you want to breed loads of them, right, you want to breed tons and tons of them, you're better adding lots of plants and wood to the tank, because this will provide your shrimp with places to hide. It provides places for them to graze. Right, and there's also other elements as well, guys. Like I'm not sure you guys can even see it in this tank. I have a lot of wood in this tank, and for Neocaridina, I think you need a lot of wood because they're so prolific. You need to provide them with a lot of biofilm. People don't know this either, but the biofilm is actually a source of minerals, right, proteins, and of course something that is very important, and this is the makeup of the shell of the shrimp, right? It's called chitin. Right, you get that from biofilm, right? So the more things that you can add to the tank that can increase your biofilm in the tank through just simple surface area, right, then the more biofilm that you'll get in the tank, right? And then this increases your shrimp's ability to actually just basically live, right? So the thing I would tell you to do here, if you have a lack of plants, lack of wood, lack of decorations, get them in your tank. Right, you will see this one over time. Right, I did a hard colour the plants in this when I moved into the house, just because it was so much plants, guys, that there was no light getting to the bottom. I gave this a hard colour, but you can see it's all grown back in nicely. And as a result, right, if you do this, you'll have more buried shrimp, because there's more places for them to hide and not feel so stressed and drop their eggs, and eventually you'll just see tons and tons of babies, right? So there you go. There is my 4th mistake that I see that people often mistake, new beginners specifically, is putting a lack of plants and stuff into their tank in the first place. Alright, my beautiful shrimp fam, in the 5th place I would say this is quite a common mistake, and this is people ignoring signs of stress or disease or parasites in the tank, right? And a lot of the time with new beginners, this will just simply be through ignorance. You won't actually know what you're looking at in the tank, right? So what I suggest, guys, is you be vigilant with your animals, right? What I want you to do is go in, look in your aquariums, get yourself a magnifying glass, right? I have one somewhere here, let us look. Get yourself a magnifying glass. I've been in this hobby for a good 20 years plus keeping shrimp, and probably about 40 odd years keeping fish, and this is something that you want to get that is really, really useful. I mean, I'm quite blind, you guys all know this, I'm quite blind, but this helps a lot for me see tiny things in, can you see my eyeball, in the tanks. And yeah, these common mistakes are that you're not looking hard enough to see signs of stress in the tank in the first place. Right, if you have parasites, for example, leaving parasites on the animals can cause stress. It's quite a common thing. You can see that in other parasitic animals with other animals. These are quite a bad thing just to leave. But you get, some people would say some parasites like Scutellera, they're not so bad, it's just a worm that sticks on the head of the shrimp. Well, I know for a fact that these Scutellera worms, they actually lay the eggs in the gill of the shrimp, under the gill plate at the front. A lot of you might know this. Where the carapace is, this is the head of the shrimp up here, and they lay eggs on the inside. These eggs that are there, they will adhere to something, right? And anywhere where you have a contact point with a parasite and another organism, there often is a little bit damage, right? And if you have a little bit damage, that can lead to infection, right? We were talking about a mistake that new shrimp keepers make is not cleaning the tank enough, just not seeing the visible signs. Well, one of the signs that your tank isn't clean enough in cherry shrimp, as an example, that you get this in other ornamental shrimp as well, is a thing called a bacterial infection called rust, right? It's basically a brown spot that erodes away the shell of the shrimp, right? So if you have stuff like this, then how would you fix it? The way I would fix it is start to clean the bloody tank. Hope I don't get demonetized, but I'm going to start to be the more like the way I am in real life in my videos. My wife would say I'm an asshole, but I can't say that. Kind of me definitely demonetized. But yeah, keep an eye on your tanks. Get yourself a magnifying glass and keep an eye on your shrimp. There's nothing worse than stress for a shrimp, for them basically going belly up and dying, right? So get yourself one of these. Okay, so the next common big mistake, I would say this would be in at number 6, and that is people having incompatible tank mates with their cherry shrimp from the start. Right? Again, this comes down to just ignorance and not knowing that other fish and stuff will actually eat your shrimp. The amount of videos and stuff that I've seen where people have lots and lots of cherry shrimp and then they'll have like cichlids and stuff in the tank, and you're like, those cherry shrimp are gone. They will be dead. That's one of the biggest mistakes I see. And how do you fix it? Well, guys, it's quite obvious. So you have to remove the predatory fish in the tank, right? And it's quite a simple thing to understand this. All fish, right, in general, will probably eat shrimp. Right? As far as I know, right, I've been doing this, as I said before, I've been doing this for a very long time. The only fish that I've not seen do this so far is bristlenose plecos. So I don't know why I've not seen them do this, because you'd think a baby Neocaridina, a baby cherry shrimp, is absolutely tiny. And bristlenose plecos, their mouth's not exactly small, so how are they able to detect that there's a baby shrimp there, and how are they able to detect not to eat it? Do they detect it or do they eat it? I don't know, but what I can say for sure is in any tank that I have bristlenose pleco in here, the bristlenose plecos seem to be more interested in being aggressive towards each other, especially the males, and things like food in the tank and wood. Right? You must have wood with this species of fish in the tank. But everything else I've used, even guppies, endlers, they will predate on small, tiny newborn shrimp. Right? So this is something that you have to take into consideration when you start up your tank, what type of tank it is, what is your goals, and basically go from there. Right? I'm not here to judge you if you want to keep a cherry shrimp with endlers or guppies or anything like that. Right? That's not my job, because I actually have endlers in a little tub here, and my shrimp do actually breed and stuff in this little tub as well, but I'm not here to judge if you want to do it differently. How would you fix this incompatibility issue? Well, most of the time, guys, as we've talked about, it comes down to a simple thing: food. Everything that you see needs to eat, right? Even things like planaria, assassin snails, they all need to eat. Right? So if you don't give them food, they'll start to predate on your shrimp. So that is how you fix it. You give them more of what they need, more food, right? And observe with your little magnifying glass what it is they're actually doing in the tank, right? And that's how you learn. All right, Shrimp Farm. So in at number 7, I wasn't sure whether to include this in my little list of common mistakes, because it is kind of similar to the ones that we listed before, where we were talking about poor water quality. But this one is a tiny bit different, right? So let's talk about neglecting your tank's cleanliness. And this basically comes down to, guys, not doing enough maintenance in the tank at all. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, having a tank full of cherry shrimp, never cleaning the tank, wondering why they're all dying, wondering why your water's yellow, wondering why your plants are yellow, your substrate is filthy, your filtration's barely working because you've never cleaned it in your life. This is what I'm talking about with neglecting your tank's cleanliness. And how do you fix it? Well, it's as simple as tidy your bloody tank up, start to clean your filtration. When you do your water changes, squeeze your sponges into your bucket of water, stick them back on, that will help a lot. It's up to you whether you want to remove excess plants and whatever else, but things like yellowing plants are a sign that the plants are just not getting enough nutrients. So you want to make sure that you do your water changes as well. Guys, let's talk about this very, very honestly. I think the last time I did a water change in this tank was 2 weeks ago, so now it is hypothetically due a water change. But do I always do it every second week? No. Sometimes it's every 3 weeks, sometimes it's every 4 weeks. But that is how I do it, right? So make sure that you watch your tank's conditions and just react accordingly. It's pretty simple, this stuff. Alright, my super shrimp fans, if you stuck this long to the end of the video, then you deserve a medal, right? So let's go on to number 8, and that is one of the most common mistakes I see with new shrimp keepers, new cherry shrimp keepers, is they don't acclimate the shrimp properly. Right, I've seen too many videos of so-called professionals just throwing their shrimp straight into a tank, and that's really not the good advice to give new shrimp keepers. In my opinion, right guys, the method that you should use is drip acclimation. And if you do it this way, it is like a gentle introduction to your tank for the shrimp. It gives them adequate time to adjust themselves and their bodies, because these little things are little living animals, right? And they're not quite the same as us and fish, guys, as in we have flexible skin like this, and you know, like we can kind of adjust our backgrounds a little bit. You remember, like shrimp have a hard outer skin. Did I just whistle when I said that there? I did, didn't I? Shrimp have a harder outer skin, so the way I like to think of it like is their shell is a barrier like this. Right, on each side you have fluid, right, and on each side, right, it has different parameters, right, so it takes a little bit of time for this fluid to pass through the harder shell of the shrimp, so you can't just chuck them straight in the water, or you will have issues, right? So the most common ones that you will see as an issue is the shrimp will molt. Quite often I will see people say, yeah, I added my shrimp and then the next day they all molted, so that's a good sign, right? No, that means that you didn't acclimate your shrimp properly. Right? That means that you forced a molt. Forcing molts is one of the worst things you could do, because shrimp typically will molt, adult shrimp that is, will typically molt every 3 to 4 weeks. Young, very small shrimp, from baby shrimp like this kind of size, tiny teeter things like that, will molt roughly once or twice a day, guys. Tiny teeter top ones, like very, very small ones, will molt really, really regularly up until they get to maybe 2.5 centimeters, which is about an inch, something like that, and then they'll slow down a little bit. And the reason that they molt like this is because it is just how they grow. Right? And when you have, like for example, if you have a female shrimp, what is the gestation time, guys? What is the gestation time of a buried female shrimp? Tell me in the comment section if you know. Right? What is it roughly? It's roughly between 3 and 4 weeks, which coincides with when the adults molt. Right? So if you force a molt, you're forcing when the shrimp can actually reproduce, right? And you're forcing all different kind of things like hormonal issues and stuff in the body. It takes some time to build up the proper hormones to actually be able to liquefy the things that are in their shell to be able to make them molt. I'll go into detail about that in another video actually, because that's quite an interesting one. What happens when a shrimp molts? What actually liquefies the shell enough that it's all rubbery, and yeah, it's quite an interesting topic, right? So we'll talk about that next, right, guys. But on the topic of this, about not acclimating your shrimp properly, what is the solution? Quite simple. Let me show you. If I can find a nice piece of this one's long enough. So what you want to get yourself, guys, is get yourself at least 1 meter of silicone tubing like this, right? And all you do is you put one end into the tank, this end into the tank, right? And if you have an air stone, you can shove that on the end here, and it will help to weigh this down. When the tank is full and full of water like this, stick it in like that, right? And then you tape the outside to the tank, and then on this side, right? All you do is put a little knot on it like this, and this controls the flow of the water that goes out into your bucket. If you're going to acclimate, right, so you take your shrimp in your bag, add them to your bucket, cut open the bag, and then start your drip acclimation process from this. And how do you start it? You just put your mouth in a little simple suck like that, and the water will come down through the pipe like this and into your bucket down here. And this is how you control it, as I said, right? So the tighter you pull this, the slower your drip will be. If you open it, the faster it will be, right? So you actually have to pull it quite tight to get it to actually go to a slow drip. But doing it this way, guys, versus plop and drop, you may as well actually be just taking your bag of shrimp and going like this and dropping it straight on the ground, because this is how you're affecting its survival, the shrimp survival in the bag. Do this, get yourself an airline, as I said, drip acclimate them. What I do, guys, is what I used to do before I got into measuring conductivity and TDS and all that stuff, is I used to just do it for a certain amount of time. As in, I would have a container like this, for example, and I would fill this up until it was full, 1 or 2 drips a second, and then I would add the shrimp to the tank, right? But if you go into more advanced stuff, if you have a conductivity meter or a TDS meter, for example, you can actually measure the water that's in here and the water that's in the tank and see how close they are, right? And don't add the shrimp into the tank until this water matches the same parameters exactly, right? And then when you add them to the tank, you just go like this, put them in the tank, and your shrimp will be perfectly acclimated, right? And I trust this method so much, guys, that in my own shrimp room, I'm quite comfortable moving buried female shrimp from one tank to the other, right? I never used to be comfortable moving them, because if you take a female shrimp from this tank and put it into that tank, plop and drop style method, there's a risk that she will drop her eggs, right? So always do it, when you can, always do it with a drip acclimation pipe like this. They're very, very cheap. You probably get these for a couple of dollars or something like that. And yeah, and that's how I do it. 1, 2, 3, testicles, testing. Okay, shrimplets, there you have it. There's my most common mistakes. I think there was 8 of them. If you avoid the most common mistakes I've listed here, then your shrimp will be golden, as we've talked about before. And by the way, I just want to say again, to reiterate this, that we all make these same mistakes, guys. So don't feel bad about things that you do in your tanks that lead to the odd death or something, right? I know it's called negligence, but we can't possibly know all this stuff in the beginning. Because when you go into like a fish keeping shop or your local fish store, and you go and they've got cherry shrimp, and they've got them with fish and stuff, there's nobody really there telling you, right, avoid this, do this, and your shrimp will be golden. There's just nobody there to help you on your way in the beginning. That's what I'm here for.